I am here today with Carrie Peters, and we will be presenting to you User Delight 2.0, leveraging latest new release features. There are four main areas of the system that we'll be looking at some new release features and improvements to existing functionality. These are in the areas of setup, the role center, entering and viewing data, as well as error resolution. As you can see, some of these areas relate to initial setup of users and Business Central, while some of them relate to data entry and how to best utilize and navigate through our systems.
You've probably experienced the painful moment of having a new user of Business Central open up their Role Center for the first time, take a look at it, and say, there's nothing on the screen that is what I do. When we look at our Role Center, we have a couple of options in this moment. For the most part, we educate our customer on how they can go to their settings in the upper right-hand portion of the screen and change their role from the available roles on the list to something more appropriate. While this is completely valid, it's not a great initial login experience for a brand new user. Microsoft, when we're loading a new system, gives us the business manager or business manager evaluation role as a starting point. So it's a little better because at least the business manager role is a little bit more generic. They've given us a new feature that really helps to create a better experience for the brand new user, and that is found in our user settings. If you choose user settings, all the users who are in your system will be listed here. And if you select Manage and Edit, we have a new screen that allows us to predefine the role per user before they log in for the first time. So if my appropriate role is not as business manager, but it's as shipping and receiving, I could choose to set that as my role. And when I log in the next time as this user, and in this case, I'm just going to refresh. When I log in the next time, now my role will reflect the correct role that was selected as default, and I can see that in my settings. Great improvement to be able to give our new users a fabulous first experience. Another one of the improvements that has been made is the ability to make a change to the welcome banner that you see on the Role Center. I'm going to turn on my personalization so I can highlight the welcome banner. Now this has to be changed from code, and I'm not a developer, so I'm not going to show you how to do that here. I just want you to know that it's available. How valuable would it be to you and to your customers if you were able to change the messages that are available here and direct the customer in certain ways, especially during those first few days and weeks after their go live? I would love to put a message like, "Hi, you're going to do great today in Business Central," or "Please contact Carrie if you need help with anything today as you use Business Central for the first time." There are many things that we could do, and of course I like to send positive, encouraging notes to my customers, especially in that very critical beginning period when they just are starting to use Business Central. So I think this is a great improvement. Don't forget that as part of the onboarding experience, we also have the new checklist feature. If you choose checklist and checklist administration, you can see the elements that have been included in here. There are some great things that help to orient our users to the things that they're supposed to do when they start using the system. As you look through the available fields here, you can see how we can customize what we see for what is the task that needs to be done, what is a more descriptive way of explaining what that is, how long it'll take them approximately to do that, and who should be required to do those, as well as which roles they're assigned to. This is all something that you can manage and add to by choosing to create a checklist line item. You can make your own checklist available to your customers. One last small thing that I like is the ability to simply see additional and more useful information about our users. When we choose to navigate on our user, we can see a whole lot of additional information, but the thing that I want to see, as of the date of this recording, I'm not seeing this available on the menus because the thing that I'm looking for that we can see in the documentation is the Show More Details button. And as our documentation shows us, we should be able to see a few additional pieces of information as far as who may have an Essential or Premium license, who has a Microsoft 365 license, and who has a super permission set. All this is very valuable information for any administrator, and I eagerly anticipate seeing this added to the feature set of the product.
Let's talk about the Role Center and some recent new release features that we've been given for the daily user to be able to better find information that they need from their Role Center. We have a new Role Center available for collection management, and I'm going to go ahead and pop into Business Central and take a look at this. In Business Central, I'm going to go to Settings and My Settings. And you can see that I'm in a role called Accounts Receivable Administrator, which is a newer role given to us by Business Central for someone who is using accounts receivable functions every day to be able to more easily find these functions on their Role Center. So let's take a look at that Role Center. I can see that pretty much everything on here is tailored toward the accounts receivable employee. So I have posted documents related to sales, unposted sales documents, things related to reminders, and reports related to accounts receivable. Now, if I scroll down a little bit further, I can see that in my wide data queues, I have the total overdue in local currency, and I also have the total outstanding in local currency that I can drill into at any point to see what's making up these different balances. It's important to note that there is a wide data queue that requires a step of additional setup. For this AR accounts balance, what I need to do is I need to actually specify to the system what GL accounts should be pulled into here. I'll navigate to my general ledger setup. And in the reporting section of my general ledger setup, I can see that I have a newer field called Accounts Receivables GL Account Category. And what I need to do here is I need to specify, based on my GL account category setup for my chart of accounts, which option here should pull into that wide data queue on the Role Center. So I'll go ahead and I'll select for accounts receivable. Keep in mind that for this setup to work correctly, your chart of accounts do need to have the proper classifications. So that would be something to double check. I'll navigate back to my Role Center, and I can see that right now, even with an F5 refresh, this balance is still 0. So what I'm going to do is a complete reload of this browser tab. And now I can see that my AR account balance has updated, and I can drill into this and I can review the different activity in those accounts. The next function I'd like to show from the Role Center is something called Search Company Data. So let's navigate back to our Role Center. And I'm simply going to go to System Search. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type my name, Carrie. And if we go all the way down to the bottom, we can see we have this option for Search Company Data. So I can go ahead and I can click on that. And what the system will do is it will plug in my name for the search, and it will look everywhere in the system based on the setup where we find that value. So I can see that we have a contact named Carrie's Creative Construction and a vendor named Carrie's Creative Construction. I could also type something in like a posted purchase receipt number to see where that's used in various documents. I'll type in chair and let's see where chair is used in our system. So we can see we have items, we have sales quote lines, sales invoice lines, PO lines. So it's showing us the different document types and then the related data in those documents. You can also set up here where to search if you have the correct permissions, which lists, tables, and fields to search in for the search company data. So those are some cool new things from the Role Center that we can use, again, for customers to more easily access and find what they need to on a daily basis. When our users are entering data, we want to make sure that they have everything available to them that they need, but also that the system is locked down enough to prevent any intentional or unintentional errors. The first newer feature that we will talk about is the ability to sync or unsync document and posting dates for documents. So let's take a look at what this looks like in Business Central. I'm going to navigate to my purchase and payables setup. And in my purchase and payables setup, I can see that there is an option all the way down here to link document date to posting date. And if I hover over that, I can see that it says it specifies whether the document date changes when the posting date is modified. Now, having this toggle on would follow with what used to be the standard functionality, but we have the ability to unlink now as well. Let's go ahead and let's leave document date to posting date link toggled on, and I'll navigate to a purchase invoice. And in that purchase invoice, I'm going to update my posting date to 4/10, and I can see that that updates my document date as well. With this new setup option, we have the ability to turn off that link, meaning when I go back into my purchase invoice, I can now update the posting date to 4/15 without my document date being affected. So this is just a nice option to have available both on the purchase and payable setup side and the sales and receivables setup side. I would recommend that if you are changing this and taking that link away, that you would notify users of this change because they may be used to how it functions in the system currently. The next feature I'd like to talk about is the ability to add existing table fields to optimize pages. Now, what does this mean? This means that anyone who is customizing a page on a profile, which should typically be an administrator, a department owner, or a partner consultant, has additional fields available to be able to choose for those users to see. This is a screenshot from learn.microsoft, and the link is below. And this just shows that the filter button is now available to be able to change the category of fields to add the fields, again, when customizing a page on a profile. So you can see that there's the recommended fields, there's the all fields, and advanced. So now there's more flexibility as far as being able to add fields that exist, but you may not have been able to add even through customizing pages on a profile previously. The last thing I'd like to talk about is marking fields as read only when customizing the UI. In Business Central, I'm on my Profiles Roles page, and I am going to customize a page for the order processor. And when I customize that page, I'm in kind of like a personalization mode, but we can see that it's actually customizing. So what I'm going to do is I am going to navigate to Customers. And I'll go to Cool Internal Customer, just as a template example. And what I'd like to say is that we do not want our sales order processors to be able to modify or add the general business posting group and the customer posting group. So if I click into that, I can lock the editing on these fields. Then I can simply click Done, and this change will have been made specifically for the sales order processor. This is a nice feature to have available because it kind of gives us the ability as an administrator or partner to be able to control these different records at the field level. Just keep in mind, however, that this does not remove the permissions to be able to modify that field. It only removes it at the profile or the role level for that user.
I was excited to see some of the improvements that Microsoft made with error resolution. There's a lot here, and a lot of it is small, but incredibly effective. I've set up a purchase invoice, just something simple, and I want to walk you through a few things that will help you understand how these new error resolution features work. Now pay attention to what I have on the right-hand side here. This is our document check. This was available in the prior release, and there are some things that are very helpful here, and you'll see this document checkbox change as we go through things. Since I've just created this purchase invoice without any information on the lines, I'm already getting an issue that's highlighted here. Notice the error message, there's nothing to post because the document does not contain a quantity or amount. Makes sense? We'll take care of that in just a second. Let's look at a few examples of the types of errors we could create and run into. Now I know that this particular account is not a valid account. This is our accounts payable account. I am given an error here, which is correct. This is a great control, and this is letting me know that direct posting must be equal to yes, and that the current value is no. Take note that there are 3 things on the card here that help us out. This link here will take us directly to the card so we could change the situation if we have the permission to do so. The second link allows us to refresh the page to clear the error right there. So we don't have to move our mouse from the bottom of the page to the top to clear that error. I'll show you that one more time. I can clear it right here instead of moving up here to refresh it or hitting F5. The last feature I can see is a share button. And this share button allows me to share this to Teams, email, or to copy the errors to my clipboard so I could share it with somebody else. Let's send this in an email so that you can see what happens next. This has generated a link to the page with the error details here so that if I was sending this in a support ticket or something else, that somebody else could go directly to this page so they could investigate the error that I'm having. Let's look at a couple of additional examples. If I choose a different account, in this case, I can see that this account is blocked, and it's given me a nice detailed message that tells me exactly what the problem is and gives me my same choices to go to the card to fix it, to refresh it and clear the error right there, or to share that error with somebody else. And let's look at one example that is slightly different. In this case, I'm going to fill out a little bit more information here, and I know that something is missing here, but let's try and post this and see if the system catches me. It sure does. I get my dimension error that's available here and the fact that I missed putting a value into the vendor invoice number field. Take note that you can either accept a recommended action at the top here, or you can open the related record from these error messages, or you can expand the error message so that you could see it here, and you can have the same share options here where you can copy it to your clipboard, send it to Teams, or send it via email. I think these are some great features that will allow us to be able to share information, to be able to get answers to the things that we need, especially for our newer users who are not familiar with the system yet. In addition to the examples that I just showed you, overall, the quality of the error messages in total has increased by a great amount. You very rarely will find the inevitable "there is nothing to post" error message, and you'll find something that is far more detailed, like "you can't modify a record pending approval, add a comment or reject the approval to modify the record." Those type of error messages are so much more useful than some of the very brief and cryptic error messages that we used to get in the past. Here's one more example of how Microsoft has made it easy for us to share information related to error resolution. Let's say that I didn't really have an error on here, but I just needed somebody to look at this particular purchase invoice before I continued on with my task. In the past, I could choose to simply copy the pathway here, and I'll put this into a note so you can see what you get. We're going to get our long extended link. Doesn't tell me a whole lot. It still does the job and gets it there. But if I did decide to send this in an email, I could simply paste it, and look what I have now. I have a descriptive link that tells the person that this is a purchase invoice, what the number of the purchase invoice is, who the consultant is. This is valuable. It really allows us to impart some information exactly about the information that we're sending, and gives us a whole lot more value than the full pathway that we see here. Very cool.
All right. So those were some wonderful tips from the new release, and great usability. Carrie, when you think about those particular tips that were included in there, what are your overall impressions with those? What impresses you the most?
Yeah, I think it changes every time I rewatch this video or reuse the functionality. A small change that I really like is the ability to unsync the posting and document dates, mostly because it's one of the things that confuses users most when they start to use the system, especially if those fields are flipped when you're entering them. So I like the ability to do that in the setup. I do think it's a bit counterintuitive on the setup. Usually you're toggling something on if you want it to happen, not toggling off. But yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite things. That's just a minor small change.
Yeah. As I was watching this and um, just kind of formulating some new thoughts about it, I had the thought of, this is user DIY. The idea that there's so much that is available for the end user to do themselves instead of having to have their partner do something. I was thinking about just the things that we could do to prepare the experience for users for the first time. I've always been so disappointed that people get a bad impression the first time they log in because they don't have the right profile or they don't have messaging that's appropriate to them. So the fact that we can queue that up to make those people successful when they're first using the software is a big deal. And being able to add fields to the pages, and even just the better error resolution. All of those things really empower the user to do their own thing where they don't have to put in a ticket to the help desk to help them with something. They can do it themselves. And that's very much how this whole ERP has been designed. And I love seeing that theme continue on in the new features that are released.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And then I know some of the intent by Microsoft is that frees up the time for those administrators or developers to focus on, kind of the higher level things. I
Right.
do see we have a comment by Marcella in the chat. The block editing fields can be used in place of field level security. We currently have in nav and are looking for something in BC to block users to change the fields. I want to just put a big red star asterisk on that video I recorded, because when I originally read through that feature, I understood it to be that it was only something you could modify at the profile level when customizing pages. I've not found that to be the case in further testing. So I did test locking a field for editing at the profile level, but then as the user, if I'm using that profile and I have the permissions to personalize, which most likely I do, I was able to go in there and unlock it for editing. So for me, I think it doesn't replace field level security. It's more of just a safety net measure and a reminder of you should not be editing or modifying this field, but it doesn't necessarily take away the permissions. So I would put that asterisk on that video. And I'm not sure of the intent by Microsoft, but potentially they will be modifying that feature more to accomplish something specific. But as it stands right now, I was able to go in and unlock it for editing. So not security necessarily, but just more of a reminder, I would say.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, great question though.
I would agree with your assessment too. I think a lot of the things that we see in the monthly releases now are queuing something up that's coming to be more fully developed in the future. So as you see some of these smaller things that come through where it's like, doesn't quite make sense, just wait. Sometimes it only takes another few months for that full feature to come through that they've kind of set that architecture up behind the scenes with.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I know that's been something, people have kind of been wanting out of Business Central security and permissions, is that field level. So maybe there's something bigger in the works.
Yep. Any other questions from people about the things that you've seen related to that last session?